GA Nation, we are back and we are in the swing of things. Last week, I'll tell you what, I came on the show and I started the whole show off by saying the golf tournament would be better than the Super Bowl. And was I ever right? The Super Bowl stunk and the golf tournament was epic. So I'm not saying I can predict the future, but I was pretty close. I also took the winner of the tournament on my team. I also won the draft. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm pretty much tooting my own horn. So very excited about last week. We had a lot of great golf. And we're going back to another awesome tournament, Pebble Beach. It's a lot of fun to watch on TV. It's a little bit of a headache to handicap because who knows what you're going to get weather-wise and wind-wise. It's going to be a little bit of chaos, but it's always a fun tournament. And we got a pretty full field. So we've really got those big names back in. This is the swing where we really get some exciting golf. I'm excited to break it down with the absolute best in the industry. But we brought in a special guest tonight as well. So, Courtney, I got your question. We're going to get to it in a minute. But before we do, Todd, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
We're excited to have you, Todd. Another one of the excellent contributors that we have over here at Roto Baller. If you haven't already, make sure you smash the like button. Give us a follow. It goes a long way. For those of you watching the show tonight, you've probably seen Todd before, and if you have, you follow his content. You are making more money by doing so. Todd is an excellent follow. We got our hands full drafting against him tonight at Pebble Beach, and Spencer also has his hands full because it's not a one-course tournament. We're going to have two courses for Spencer to break down for us tonight. Spence, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Joel. The one thing I'll say before we get into the show this week is my girlfriend's tuned in right now, and she's from Seattle, so she's a big Seattle Seahawks fan. I don't think she's too happy with some of these comments that are coming from you. She quite enjoyed the game. Her Seahawks got the victory done. So just throwing it out there. There's listeners out there that you're already upsetting. It's sometimes just the audience. This time it's my girlfriend in the audience.
In my defense, I didn't say anything bad about the Seahawks. Seahawks played a great game. Seahawks won. Congratulations to your girlfriend for winning her first Super Bowl. But the game itself was objectively pretty boring. Overall, I mean, there was just not a lot of scoring, which I like. I like offense. I like to see scoring, which is maybe a little clue about how I'm going to be drafting golfers this week. On the offensive, scoring golfers, maybe answering Courtney's question, which was, in a no-cut event, who do you think is the best strategy, going full contrarian or prioritizing scoring upside? For me, to answer that question, it's all about scoring upside with a no-cut event. Because what the no-cut event does is it gives you 4 rounds guaranteed. So part of the strategy that we have on most weeks is you want to have some level of safety in your lineups because you want to get 6 out of 6. Obviously, you're not going to win any tournaments if you don't get 6 out of 6 making the cut. But this week, everybody's going to have 6 out of 6. That's no longer something you have to think about. Everyone's getting 4 days. So with 4 days locked in, you might as well go for upside. Get the guys who are going to get birdies in bunches. If the worry is that they could implode one day and what in a regular week would be miss the cut, that's not going to happen this week. They can implode one day and still have a great Sunday, get you back in it, and make some money. So that's my strategy on that front. But I'd love to hear from you, Spence. Do you think of it similarly?
I would say it's somewhere of a hybrid between the two. I think where you are spot on is you have to prioritize upside. The safety that you're typically looking for on these tournaments with a cut just will not play. A lot of times for these events in a no-cut tournament, one good round can make up for everything else that goes south in there. So you're trying to find birdie makers. You're trying to find that upside. An 80-man field can be difficult sometimes, or any no-cut tournament in general, just because a lot of the consensus will land in the same spots. I do think you have to be cognizant of the fact of that, and you have to try to figure out ways to differentiate a build. But, I mean, what I would tell everybody out there is that I do not want to be the case is I would not be trying to go full contrarian just for the sake to say that you've gone full contrarian on it. It still matters where the finishing positions are. It still matters trying to find birdies. You still need that upside that's going to enter the mix. I will say this, Joel, and I don't know if people out there, I've written this in articles a million times, and I'd love to get Todd's opinion on this after I give this opinion. But one of the things that I've noticed, and for better or for worse, and for people that copy and for people that don't, data golf is a really big influential decision maker in the market. And a lot of times, data golf as a whole, they are very sharp. think their numbers are good. Their projections are pretty well thought out. I am not in alignment with them this week. And I think for me personally, that's a really good thing because in an 80-man field, I would rather have the ability to go rogue within my own build there and believe in the math of why I'm taking it. So, in today's modern day of golf, data golf is kind of the big influential thing. I wrote about it in a Rotoball article today. Like, my matchups can move in the market, but even with as much as I can move a matchup, data golf hits it on the other side on a lot of those plays, and all of a sudden all those values go all the way back. So I like this tournament. I think that there's a lot of upside to be had here, but at the end of the week, it's going to be one of those spots where there's either going to be egg on my face because data golf's going to be correct, or this is one of those events where I'm going to win a bunch of money because I am going to be different on it. But I would love to get Todd's opinion on this question.
Yeah, I think especially at a place like Pebble Beach, the if you look at the list of people that's won here versus the people that have really good course history, they don't necessarily line up either. You look at somebody like Jason Day, who hasn't finished outside the top 25 here in 10 years, but he also hasn't won. So it's like, what are you necessarily going after? Like you said in this no-cut event, finding 6 guys that all finish in the top 25 or top 30 area is not going to help you like it would necessarily at, a full man field. And so, yeah. And plus, they're switching to Poana greens or back to Poana greens. And that always comes with its own set of, inconsistencies in putting stats too.
So just, Spence, repeat for me. Maybe I missed the part where you said, what is it that specifically about data golf that you're disagreeing with?
The entire,
everything. Just
a lot of it. Where the values are this week, where the fades are. I'm not really in alignment in a lot of those things. I do really like Todd's opinion in general. Like, we can use Jason Day. We talk about Jason Day enough on this show that I think that that's a very fair point to be made in it. And I kind of like Jason Day this week. So, I mean, but if you look at my model, one of the things that you will notice within my sheet is that there is a negative trajectory for upside, just kind of in that exact way that Todd talked about, where the safety is there. There's a lot to like about him from a safety output. And if you believe he's going to come top 10, he can pay off the price tag. But if that upside does not come to fruition, you have to be careful to not get caught with overpaying on players that are going to be in that upper tier of pricing. But yeah, I mean, to answer the question, Joel, it's pretty much everything. I am not in agreement anywhere. Doesn't mean that they are wrong or right, or I am wrong or right on this. It just means there's going to be a differing of opinions between the two of us. And if other people in the market start having the same viewpoint, that makes it a little tougher. But if people start listening to data golf with it, it's going to open up ownership in spots. And my fingers are crossed that people are kind of blindly follow data golf down the path here. And if they are correct, it will be a losing week. But if they are wrong and I am correct, it will be a winning week for me. And for an 80-man tournament, like, give me every reason to try to differentiate a build.
In the left corner, we have one of the most popular websites for golf betting, Data Golf, giving out everywhere in odds. In the right corner, we have 2-time Golf Writer of the Year, potentially going on 3-time, waiting to get that nomination. Who are you going to side with? But let's keep in mind, we also have two superior drafters in myself and Todd going against you tonight. So a lot of information out there. You tune in, you can watch the draft tonight. You'll find out who the sneaky plays are, where the differentiation is. Hopefully it's a way to make some more money this week. But before we get there, we're playing 3 rounds at Pebble Beach, 1 at Spyglass this week. Spence, talk to us. What are you looking for on the courses this week?
I also wrote this over in my Rotoballer article. One of the things I talked about is that money talks in this. And if you look in 2024, the PGA Tour was able to unlock this premier venue. They added $20 million to the player pool. They shifted it to an elevated contest. And that simple action has turned this tournament back into that star-studded event that it's that made-for-television appeal that it has. And now it has the players there that warrant all of that consideration of what you see in the background. You mentioned it, Joel. It's going to be Pebble Beach and Spyglass Hill. It is worth noting that the Pro-Am element is still going to be in effect on Thursday and Friday. Players are going to have to rotate between those two courses with their amateur partners. We lose Monterey Peninsula from the mix. It's no longer that 3-tournament onslaught or 3-course onslaught that we used to get, but amateurs are also going to be gone on the weekend. But this is one of those tough things for a couple of reasons here. Stat tracker at both courses, that is a positive in this. These are two courses, though, that can be very different in the output if you look at the weather. So Spyglass has this tree-line disposition. If it gets really windy, it's protected to the wind, where Pebble Beach has absolutely no protection. I'm sure everybody's seen the videos throughout the year. You take the short par 3 and you have players that are literally having driver in hand trying to reach the green there. And that's what can happen if wind and weather ends up entering the mix. I don't see that in the forecast currently right now, at least on Thursday and Friday. Sunday is a whole different discussion of what it looks like is going to happen, but you have a wet course. There's a lot of rain that's hit. I think that's something that's worth noting on this. And then the other thing that I would love to get both of your guys' opinion on. So Pebble has the 4th widest fairways on tour, very small green complexes. A lot of that makes this a second shot course. Putting comes into play. Todd talked about POA, how that's a wonky statistic to begin with, but we had seen in years past, every golfer kind of hits their shot to the same area. That's been mitigated a little bit over the last 2 years with Wyndham Clark winning, and then Rory rewrote the paths that people took. It's easier said than done to take the lines that he took of going over trees and cutting off the entire venue, but it has been done, and there has been this blueprint that's come into play, and this is no longer that tournament that is not that elevated of peel where you get a lot of the short hitters that are showing up here. You have big boys that have big clubs in their bag, and they're going with different routes than we would normally see. So it's something to keep in mind from a statistical perspective. And then just the very last thing before we move into this draft, I say this every single year on the show. You can probably go back and listen to any podcast I've ever done talking about Pebble Beach. My favorite category to look at is this category called putts per GIR. I think that's a better encapsulation than you get of just pure putting or just pure iron play. Essentially what that means is I'm trying to find players that are going to hit a lot of greens in regulation, that are going to hit it to a shorter proximity distance, and then the likelihood that they make those putts. That is a category the last 2 years. I know we can talk about Wyndham and Rory having the distance here, and maybe that's part of the reason. But if you look at that category and you ignore everything else, Wyndham was the number 1 player for me 2 years ago. Rory was in the top 5. That seems to be the indicator in a lot of these spots of where these guys end up spiking. And I'm sure we're going to talk about a lot of those names because that's kind of where I'm going to be firing this week on my picks.
Ooh, all right. Well, to nobody's surprise this week, I will be drafting first because I won last week. So I'm going to be giving myself the first pick, especially after going back-to-back weeks with a punishment. I deserve the first pick. So as a quick refresher, as I pull the draft board up, we will be drafting tonight. If you're new to the show, make sure you get on YouTube. You can participate in the draft by getting in the chat. Courtney Harden is typically the audience team captain. Courtney, unless you can't do it, I will assume you will be captaining the audience tonight. What we're going to do is we're going to have a snake-style draft where we go 1 through 4, and then audience, you'll be going last. You'll get 2 in a row, and we go back. Anytime the audience makes a pick, anyone in the chat can nominate a golfer. So anyone you want the audience to take, just put the name in. When a golfer is named a second time, so put in the chat twice, that is officially the audience's pick, and that's where Courtney steps in to kind of confirm the pick, that's the one that will be going to the audience. So everyone go in there and nominate a golfer. Once the guy's mentioned twice, that will be confirmed the audience pick. The caveat here is you do need to make sure you stay in. Oh, I like Captain Court. That is a nice ring to it. The CC, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. All right, Captain Court has been named. You do have to make sure you stay within a DraftKings salary. So you can't just take all the best golfers. You need to make sure you can actually afford and play your lineup. Now, you don't get the first pick. You don't give yourself the first pick if you're not going to take Scottie Scheffler. So, yes, Spencer already put it in. I didn't tell him it wasn't hard to guess who I was taking. I'm taking Scotty Scheffler. I'm not going to spend here and tell you why I like Scotty Scheffler. If you're watching our show, you know enough to know that he is just by far better than everyone else right now at golf. And that's why I want him on my team, even at 1,400. Now, the one things I will say about Scotty this week that might be helpful for roster construction is two things. On the positive end of Scotty, I think the pricing is pretty soft. And I think you'll have an easier time this week building around Scotty than I think you did maybe the last 2 weeks. I think as you go further down, there's more guys in the mid to low 7K range, high 6K range that I'm happy to play than there were the last couple of weeks, which means I can build a lineup with Scotty and feel more confident about it. In addition, you get all 4 days. So even with those guys that might be a little riskier down there in the low 7, high 6K range, they're guaranteed 4 days. So you're going to get 4 scoring days with, in my opinion, a guy who is head and shoulders the best golfer. And that's what Scotty Scheffler is. He's just so much better than everyone. I mean, 1,400 might still be too cheap for how well he's playing. I mean, he almost played himself out of the tournament in round 1 and still almost won the tournament. So that's how good he is. The only counter to that is, and I wonder what the final ownership number looks like. There's no arguing Scotty Scheffler is far and away the best golfer. But if you want to give yourself a reason to not play him, I would say if it gets wild out there and the winds are kind of crazy, that should neutralize his skill advantage a little bit because there's only so much you can do if the wind's blowing the ball over the place. So if you want to take the stance that, a $1,400 Scotty Scheffler who's going to be coming in at a pretty high ownership, I think, there's a world where I can fade him and think the wind is just going to neutralize him this week and I can get some other guys. I think that's a reasonable thought process. But given the first pick in our format tonight, I'm taking Scotty Scheffler. Todd, would love to let's see this. You're up with your first pick in the King of the Draft. Quickly, before we move off Scotty, just tell me, is there any reason you won't be playing Scotty this week?
I think the only reason why I wouldn't try to make a lineup with Scotty is sort of the same reason. I tried it last week in Phoenix, and you just have to scrape such the bottom of the barrel. And when you're talking about a tournament where, yes, you get 4 days, but you're also trying to pick the best firepower to fill your team with. Yes, you've got Scotty on your team, but if, you've got 5 other guys that's fighting for, top 30s, I don't know that picking Scotty is really going to do your team much good in the overall aspect of things.
So there you have it. So Todd is out on Scotty Scheffler. He says he's not that good. He wouldn't play him. That's what Todd said.
I just don't think he's good enough to overcome 5 other people.
I'm kidding. He didn't say that. I'm totally joking. All right, Todd, you're up with your first pick here. Scotty's off the board. How are you starting off your draft tonight?
I really love the 9K range. I think you look at a lot of the guys in that list. A lot of them have really good approach numbers from inside 150 yards, which is kind of the bread and butter of Pebble Beach. As far as the deciding factor between all these guys that I like, really, I think Justin Rose is kind of the one that jumps out to me the most. Going back to what I said earlier about having good course history along with a win, there's not many people that have that. Justin Rose is one of those people. He's only played here, I think, 4 or 5 times in his career, but he did win this event in 2023. And the thing about length is, and of course he won at Farmers, so it's not like length is really a big issue to him yet. But I think with his age comes another level of course management that you have to have around Pebble Beach, because the distance gap is only getting wider, and that, you saw that last year when Rory was able to just dominate. You weren't really seeing that except for maybe Tiger when he'd done it at the 2000 US Open. But, when it comes to somebody that's already playing well, that's already, very well, very good at kind of picking his strategy and sticking to it and not necessarily trying to match what the rest of the field is doing, I think Pebble Beach kind of sets up perfectly for that.
Justin Rose is interesting because he's playing so well now. I think it's a good pick. I like where you went there. but like he almost like disappeared. He was so bad for 4 years. I was written him off. I was like, oh, he can never play him again. And then he's made this resurgence where all of a sudden he's back, and now he's just playing great golf. So it's kind of hard to handicap because what you've seen lately is this great golfer. They got the vintage Justin Rose that we've seen from years ago. And it's hard, it's hard not to trust it and to believe it, especially how well he's playing. So at 9,400, I think when I first saw the price tag, I was a little bit like sticker shock. I was like, wow, 9,400 for Justin Rose. But the more I sat on it, the more I thought, that's I think justified at this point. He should be up there in that range.
I mean, what else did you get from a top 10 player in the world?
Exactly. Top 10 player in the world. He's put up the results. He certainly, deserves to be there. Spence, would love to get your take on Justin Rose this week.
So one of the first matchups that I put out there, I know this is not a DFS answer, but I'll give some of my betting card away on this show. I took Justin Rose in a matchup against JJ Spawn. That number has not moved. That number has kind of stayed flat for as much as I sometimes come on here and say that we move numbers quickly. That one has kind of stayed steady in that minus 112 sort of range. Rose has a lot of upside in my model, and that's not something that my sheet usually finds from him. And I think that there are courses, whether that's Farmers with Torrey Pines or it's here with Pebble Beach, where he just churns out success at those venues over and over again. And we've seen that consistently from Rose at this course. And, Todd talked about it with when it comes to age and length and all of those factors. And, I guess we will see if the wet conditions and the way that players have played it in the past, if it changes anything. But even if you just look at the last two iterations of this tournament, when it was played in a more elevated field, it's a third from Rose last year and 11th from him the year before. And then the victory in 2023 when it wasn't quite the same stature of what we have. But Rose is clicking right now. And I'll do a little humble brag on here. There's one professional golfer that I know of that follows me on Twitter. Justin Rose is the one.
Really?
Yeah.
So Justin Rose should absolutely be on the show next week.
Justin Rose wins. There will be a message. I should be really writing him for any reason, but I think if there's a real reason that he takes down an elevated event or he takes down a major at some point, I might have to use that little perk that I have of him actually being somebody that we follow each other.
I think that's got to be a bet that we get made on the show. Will Justin Rose ever end up on the show? I say yes. I think we get him on.
I hope you are correct.
All right, well, I got bad news for you. You can't take him because he's on Todd's team. So, Spence, with your first pick at Pebble Beach this week, who are you taking?
I bluffed a little bit, I guess, when I said Data Golf and I are 100% in disagreement. There is one player that I am in agreement with them, and I'm going to actually let a couple people fall here to the audience, and I could probably already put the one selection in for the audience of who I know they're going to take, and I'm forfeiting the right to take him, and I'm going to live with it. But I'm going to take Jake Knapp at $7,900. If you look at what Knapp has done to start this year, 11th, 5th, and 8th, all of that is going to look really good on the surface. I faded him at the Sony Open, played him at the Farmers, played him at the WM Phoenix Open. If you look at what he provided last week at the WM Phoenix Open, it was such a outside of the box production profile from him from what we normally get. The approach play was brilliant. The putter went in the wrong direction. He loses strokes with the flat stick. I think if he putts to his average level, he probably wins that golf tournament, and he might win that golf tournament running away. You could make a similar argument about Nikolai Højgaard, who couldn't just seem to put the pieces together himself there. But if Knapp is going to have this ability to hit his irons at the level that he is, and then you add that to the mix with the putting that he is in my model, he's 7th overall over a 2-year running perspective. He's 6th in my model over the last 24 rounds on POA greens. And if you're looking for any additional reason why he could continue to spike with the approach play, I ran this portion in my model that looked at similar conditions. So that's wet courses, wind, all of those factors of what you get at Pebble Beach. And Jake Knapp was one of the better upside climbers in approach play from these short distances. He actually cracked the top 15 for me. So I'm going to keep riding the hot hand here. I think he is the most underpriced golfer on the slate right now. I have a matchup with him. You can find that over at Rotoballer. I considered him in the outright market. I decided not to go down that route because he's hurt me one too many times, Joel, but love him here for DFS. I think that this is the best value on the board.
I have to say, I agree. I endorse that pick. And it's really the value. It's the price tag. I think Jake Knapp could have been 8,800. Actually, I think you could have priced Jake Knapp similar to Justin Rose, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. And here you get Jake Knapp $1,500 cheaper. There's a lot of value there with a lot of upside, especially the form you're getting. He has 3 top 15s already this year. He looks really strong. So Jake Knapp will be someone I'll be heavily playing as well. And he's also what I was referring to earlier when I said the pricing is soft. So if you're going to play Scotty, I think there's some better options that you can play with him this week than we had in previous weeks. The audience has locked in Russell Henley and Victor Hovland. So they're going with the double H's on the round. I think it's a pretty good start for team audience. I think both guys have plenty of upside to contend and do well here. They're spending up, but I think it's a strong start. We'd love to hear from you here, Todd. Henley and Hovland off the board. Are either or both of those guys on your radar this week?
Yeah, both of them was. The interesting thing about I'll get to Russell Henley first is you look at his course history here, and he doesn't really have that great of a run, other than I think a fifth last year. Other than that, it's been pretty mediocre. But if you look at his overall game, he's got everything that you would need to succeed here. He's really good with his wedges, really good with short irons. He's one of the best putters on tour, and he's pretty accurate off the tee. So it's kind of weird that he hasn't had better success here throughout the years. But he is on my radar as somebody I think that you just kind of keep trusting the numbers, and eventually it's gonna turn out to be something. As far as Victor Hovland, he was actually right below Scotty Scheffler on my board. When you look at his iron play, he's one of the best mid-range iron players in the world. He ranked 58th in driving accuracy last year, so he's also finding the fairway a decent amount. It's kind of his caveat. He's kind of a streaky putter, and his short game is kind of streaky as well. Both of those areas, though, have kind of been improving as we've kind of been going on. When he's played pretty well to start the season over on the DP World Tour, and then a T10 last week in Phoenix. But the one thing that really does strike me as a struggle with Victor Hovland is if you look at if you are going to miss at Pebble Beach, where's the one place or the one direction you don't want to miss? And just from my years of playing, video games and watching the tournament, you can't miss right at Pebble Beach. And he misses to the right almost at like the double the rate or double the clip that he does, the other direction. So I think if he starts getting a little wayward off the tee, I think he's going to struggle. But if he can keep it in the short stuff, I think he'll be good.
That is solid intel there. Good to know. It's not maybe the great look off the tee for Hovland this week, but I do have a question for you. You said Hovland was right below Scotty Scheffler for you this week. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So does that mean, just to clarify, does that mean Justin Rose was your number one player, or is he your third?
He was my third.
Third. Okay. All right. There you have it. So there's your big three. Interesting take, because it could, that kind of gives you Hovland can go either way. You kind of gave a thought about how you could fade him, but then you also said he's your third player on your board. There's a lot to like. So interesting.
The good form is there. He's playing well, and so I don't think I've necessarily got to worry about the driving stuff as much. But just looking at the numbers, that is a possibility.
I like it. All right. Spence, Henley and Hovland off the board. You got Jake Knapp, a great value pick. Where are you going with your second pick?
I'm a little shocked by what the audience has done. So I knew I was forfeiting Russell Henley to them, and I have an outright ticket on Russell Henley. That's not a negative mark against him. I was planning to take Victor Hovland coming back, and I kind of envisioned this world where it was going to go much differently, like Henley and whoever it would have been. I have written about Victor Hovland just very quickly before I get into this pick, because I wanted to have this just – I can't believe he's not on my team at this point. I can't believe he was the 201 that was picked, but I've talked about this quite a bit from Victor Hovland coming into this event. One of the things that you will notice every single time he has played Pebble Beach, he has come in form that is not as good as what we're going to get this week. There has not been a tournament since he has played this event leading in from a 5-week stretch where he has been better than 18th. And that's like cherry picking it to the high end of where he's finished entering Pebble Beach. Most of those results are outside of the top 30 for him. And we saw that last year where the form wasn't necessarily there. And then, he has turned it on now to start this year. He had the 10th place finish at the WM Phoenix Open, but kind of shocked. There's 7 statistical categories that I ran. Scheffler was the number 1 player in 6 of them. The only player that was number 1 in a category that was not named Scotty Scheffler was named Victor Hovland. So very disappointed to see Victor Hovland go to the audience. I think that is about as clean as that a draft could be started with what they have done. I am just going to take the player now that I would like the most to start rounding out this build and stop worrying about what ownership is going to be. Probably could have waited on Nat based off of that original answer, but I'm going to take Tommy Fleetwood at $10,200. Third in my model in weighted strokes gained total. He's 4th in the short par 72s. And of those 7 categories that I've talked about that I've run for this week, there were only 4 players that landed inside of the top 20 for me in all 7 of those categories. Scotty Scheffler would be 1. Rory McIlroy would be 2. 3 would be Russell Henley. And then 4 here would be Tommy Fleetwood. So, this is one of the spots that I am going to get ultra aggressive on. This is kind of when I talk about where Data Golf and I are different. Data Golf does not like Tommy Fleetwood this week. And if for a specific contest like this, where Scotty's already gone and I have to build in a different direction, this would be my favorite player to take at the top at his price tag. So I'm happy to get Tommy Fleetwood here. I just wish it would have come with Victor Hovland before him and then Tommy Fleetwood coming back.
All right. Well, Tommy Fleetwood off the board. I find it interesting how heavy we are at the top of the board early in this draft, which should tell you something. Todd, you're up with your segment. Would love to get your take this week on Tommy Fleetwood.
Really, all of the European Tour players that didn't at least make the trip over last week, I'm kind of out on. If you look just at Rory's, he hadn't played well here until last year. He's not necessarily hitting the driver quite as well as he was when he came to this event last year. So I don't know if he's going to be able to have the same effectiveness, especially with not having as much rollout. And Tommy Fleetwood's kind of the same way. I'm kind of big on course history this week. And I don't know, as a player myself, I just feel like coming all the way across the world to try to play in the start of the biggest events on the PGA Tour is just not necessarily the direction I'm trying to go.
All right. There you have it. With your next pick, Todd, where you going?
For me, I'm kind of staying, like I said, with the course history thing, and a guy that's kind of been playing okay to start the year. He had a first good tournament, T13 at the American Express, but he missed the cut at Farmers. Patrick Cantlay. It just seems like every year he's a part of the conversation here. He's a great short iron and wedge player, and he historically putts well. Over the last 9 appearances here, he's averaged over a stroke or over half a stroke putting. When you have that level of consistency on POA, I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, and as you said, great course history. They price him down now in the 8K range, so you feel like you're getting a little bit of value here on Cantlay. Spence, how about you? Are you playing Patrick Cantlay this week?
Yeah, I feel like I'm one of the Patrick Cantlay advocates every single week that I get an ability to play him. Anytime you can get him on California POA, that's usually a good sign. You see it within the course history. Because of the sentiment around him and because of people believing that he may not perform in some of these spots over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of miscuts. And look, everybody that watches this show knows I come on quite a bit and I mention him, but no cut this weekend, big upside to his game. Ownership's going to probably be around 10 or 12%. From a GPP perspective, there's a lot to like about him. He's somebody that was definitely on my short list, a name that I probably would have tried to fit into this build with the way it's gone currently. So, I've said this before, Joel, at least in recent memory, I think we've had one guest come on this show and actually take down the title. That was Joe, the very first time we did this. And then since that moment, there's been nobody. Todd's off to a good start right now. He needs 4 more picks, but this is one of the more promising starts we've seen.
Boom.
I think I think the only worry with Patrick Cantlay goes back to the putting, because you look at him at other places, and I've fallen victim to this myself. As you watch him on Sunday, and you'll watch him hit it to 10 feet all day long and literally not make anything. So it's just like, I feel like the places where you're getting him where he traditionally putts well, you've got to take the chance, especially like Joel said, getting him at 8,900.
Boom. There we have it. All right. I am torn here between two, but I'm going to lock in my first pick, and that's going to be Pearson Coody. And what I'm doing with this Coody pick is basically saying I think he's just elevated himself with his play so far this year to put himself into an upper tier echelon. I mean, if you just look at the results going back just a couple of weeks, I mean, 10th, 2nd, 18th, 13th, and this goes all the way back into last season. I mean, he is just consistently playing well. Is he the perfect course fit? No, I don't think he's a poor course fit. I don't think it's perfect, but I am betting he's just much better than his price tag. And I think you get a better result than the price you're going to get here with Pearson Coody. So this is what I meant when I said, you couldn't get Pearson Coody with Scheffler really in the last couple of weeks. And now this week with the softer pricing, you can. I think those are the type of picks that make this work. And I'm going to follow that up with Sahith Theegala. He's another one. It's a similar kind of thought process with Theegala this year. I mean, he's just been playing awesome. He was awful last year, unplayable. And then he's come out here in 2026 and he's looked like his old self. I mean, he's giving you 2 top 10s. He gave you a top 20 last week. He just has looked really good. The biggest issue you have with Theegala is going to be off the tee, but I think that can be mitigated a little bit this week with, clubbing down, finding his spots. He's going to be excellent around the greens and striking the ball. I think if he can mitigate the damage off the tee, you get another really good result from him this week. So, Spence, we'll go to you on this one. Are you playing either Coody or Theegala this week?
No to Theegala. You could convince me one way or another on Coody. Like, I have his proper price at 7,600. I have his proper ownership at 8%. He's 7,600. He's 8%. I think he's kind of flat of the line there. And I think you've made a good point to it, Joel. I like Pearson Coody. I've come on almost every single show, it feels like, to start this year, and I've drafted Pearson Coody. I took him last week. It is not the best course fit for him, but there are players, Chris Gotterup would be a prime example of that at the Sony Open, that there's just elite talents that can overcome some of those course fits. And I think if you believe that Pearson Coody is on that sort of a trajectory, the price tag is in a range where you can still take a chance on it. I have not decided what I'm going to do with him yet, but I certainly think he is playable at that price. He is not somebody that I'm looking to fade.
Oh, all right. I love it. Todd, would love to get your take on either Coody or Theegala, and then you're up with your third.
I kind of like the Coody pick. He's not necessarily on my board this week, but I think as far as you look at the 5 Aon Swing 5 guys that got to make the appearance this week, I think Coody's really the only one of the 5 that you could probably consistently say that you could see him remaining in these signature events for the rest of the season. I don't know. We saw Rio last week at the WM Phoenix Open. He's playing good for the week, except for on the last day, he really kind of plummeted down the leaderboard. I can't remember exactly who the other 3 names are on that list, but I like Coody. I think, like you said, Joel, I think Theegala's kind of waywardness off the tee is enough to kind of really push me away from him this week.
Actually, you just reminded me, because it was a sickening. I had a bad beat this weekend. I was in I think it was a 70-man GPP winner take all. It would have gotten you a ticket into the Masters big tournament for, I think it was $3,300. And I had Coody. I thought I was going to win. I'm Coody. I had Gotterup, and I thought I was going to win. And the guy who I was up against had Rio, and didn't Rio birdie 18? And that birdie on 18 put the other guy ahead of me by a half of a point. A
Oh,
half a
goodness.
point. I lost by a half a point, and it's winner take all, so I got nothing. So it was 3,000 or 0, which sucks. But that's all right. We'll be back this week to get redemption. All right, Todd. Well, you're up here with your third. You got Rose. You got Cantley. Where are you going from here?
So third pick, I'm going to jump a little ways down the board and kind of go with a guy that I feel like he ended last season with one of the best tee to green players on the PGA Tour, but his limited distance and his inability to kind of really get the ball in the hole on the green kind of limits his upside in certain places. But Aaron Wright, 7,100, I think you kind of got to pick your spots with him. He's really good with the wedges and scoring clubs, and his accuracy off the tee is second to none. So, I mean, you're not going to really worry about him being in the junk too much at Pebble Beach. So I think, like I said, you got to kind of pick your spots with him, because as far as he hits it off the tee, he's not, like Kevin Kisner said way back when, he's not necessarily competing at a place like Torrey Pines. He's more, I feel like, reserved for a place like Pebble Beach or Harbor Town, the RBC Heritage, places like that. And I think, the elevated event, you're getting him way down that list in price as well.
That's a good point. At 7,100, if Aaron Rye is striking it well, having one of those elite weeks, he can compete. You're getting a really good value there at only 7,100. So Aaron Rye off the board. Spence, we'd love to get your take on Rye this week, and then you're up with your third.
When I look at my model, Rye has 14 consecutive rounds of shooting par or better. Todd talked about it on just similar courses on these shorter venues. He's 12th in my model when you take these short par 72s. I don't know, though, if I'm going to get there. The ownership certainly makes him a worthwhile name to consider. I see 4% right now, which is lower than a lot of the guys down in that range. But I don't know. I worry a little bit just about the accuracy is great, and the driving is going to look good in the model. He's inside the top 15 for me for weighted driving. Some of the short iron proximities, I mean, I'm kind of talking myself into being more in on this as I'm going through it right now. He does have a positive trajectory for short iron play versus what you would get on some of these other things. Good GIR player, 7th in my sheet. I just don't know if there's other players down in that section that my model prefers. And in an 80-man field, you cannot play everybody. And he might just be one of those victims for me of, I would rather move in a different direction. But that's kind of just a mathematical answer more than anything else there.
Oh, all right. There you have it. Knapp and Fleetwood, Spence. You got about 8K per pick left. Who are you taking next?
Not the route I was planning to go. I mean, Todd's already mentioned this player. I mention him every single week. It is Mr. No Upside in my model, and that's one of the problems here. But I'm going to take Jason Day at 8,500. He is the biggest climber that I have in my sheet when you look at these short par 72s of actual projected production and then the production that we've seen at other venues. So, for all the jokes that I make about every single week, I'm going to take Jason Day, and I usually get to the last pick and I'm kind of in the price point where I can afford him. I very rarely play him. It's been a mixed bag when I do. It's not one of those things where it's like I enter him to a lineup and things seem to go well. I have a matchup on him this week. I think the safety of him is probably better than what the upside is, and maybe in a GPP contest in one of those big field tournaments, there's a little bit more upside you could shoot for. But like, the problem is when I look at this, a lot of those names have already been taken. Like I would love to go to a Patrick Cantlay in this spot. Like I'll spend $400 more and get up to Patrick Cantlay. I would like to spend $700 more and get up to Russell Henley, but those names are already gone. You kind of have to pick and choose your spots. And with where the board sits right now, I think Day is safe enough to make this work with the current build that I have.
It's interesting because I felt like, at least more recently, you've been off of Day. Yeah, I don't feel like you've taken him recently. So the fact that you're back on him this week tells me he's probably going to go out and win the tournament. So who knows? We'll see. But Jason Day back on Spencer's team, which is interesting thing to monitor. Team audience, it looks like at least one pick is locked in with Shane Lowry. And Shane Lowry, I think, is really interesting this week for a few reasons. it looks to me as if the second pick is locked in. I think it's Gerard. I will let Courtney confirm that. But while we wait, we'll go to you here, Spence. Are you interested in Shane Lowry?
I like Shane Lowry a lot. That's what I was trying to decide between. Was there were three players, and I guess I can move us into my next pick based off of this also. But
Right.
I was thinking between Shane Lowry, Sepp Straka, who I guess is who I'm going to be going with here. I would have liked to have had both on my team, but look, I think that it's a prudent point of what Todd has talked about it. And maybe it's a little bit more in play here for a name like Shane Lowry than I would say it is for Tommy Fleetwood, of making that trip and making this be your first event that you're getting on American soil. That worries me ever so slightly here with Shane Lowry, but my model's not one that typically likes him. He's a top 10 player for me this week. He was a top 10 safety pick. Did have a little bit of that negative trajectory that I just talked about with Jason Day. So maybe it's better to not have those two put together, but look at what Lowry did last year, second place in this tournament. I think he's a very, very nice pick for a golfer that's probably going to be between 10 or 12% owned. Just be aware it is his first start on American soil this year, and you never really know what's going to happen there.
All right. Noted. Jason Day off the board. You still have about 7,800 per pick, Spence. Who's your fourth pick?
I guess I gave like the most half-hearted selection of Sepp Straka ever. I didn't even talk about Sepp Straka after I gave it. I'm going to take Sepp Straka here. I talked about that putts per GIR as being one of the main categories that I really want to dive into this weekend. For me, Sepp Straka ended up grading third in my model. That's behind Russell Henley, who was 2, and Scotty Scheffler, who was 1. The flat stick this year has really done nothing. We're still waiting for it to heat up. But I think that this is one of those types of tournaments that if he can put the pieces together with the flat stick, he's going to find a bunch of fairways, hopefully here. He's going to be able to hit the proximity ranges into a closer distance than most. He's going to have to make putts. I think during one of the 4 days, he's probably going to put a big round together, and that should be enough in a GPP contest to hopefully pay off the price tag of where he's at.
All right, there you have it. Sepp Straka off the board. And I do realize we kind of skipped over the audience second pick of Ryan Gerard. So Ryan Gerard and Sepp Straka both taken. Todd, you're up here with your fourth. I would love to hear from you. Do you have a preference or a take on either one of Ryan Gerard or Sepp Straka?
Sepp Straka. Sorry, I had my mind fixed on Shane Lowry. Sepp Straka, I really did like for all the reasons that that Spencer mentioned. He's got some of the highest strokes gained metrics across the board from any distance you want to name, really. And Pebble Beach, with it being so short and the greens being so tiny, he does have a quality short game to kind of bail him out of areas. So I do like that pick. Ryan Gerard, I'm not so high on. I think you're kind of maybe starting to see the fizzle out of his run that he's been on. I know he finished T10 in his last outing, but I don't necessarily like the way his approach numbers are trending as far as this event goes.
Oh, all right. Gerard is a no-go for Todd. Well, Todd, you took Ryan last. You got about 8,200 to spend left here. Where are you going with your next pick?
So I'm going to stay down in the 69 or the 6K range. At 6,900, I'm going to take Jacob Bridgman. He's off to a really solid start this week. The place that he is at in as far as the PGA Tour hierarchy's got him pretty low as far as price point this week. And he's off to an incredible start with the putter. He's gained almost over a shot each of his last 3 events. And I think, taking somebody that's, a little bit more down the road when it comes to off the tee play as far as length over accuracy is kind of, not a bad place to kind of find yourself when you're talking about somebody that's putting the ball as well as he is. And so I think $6,900 is a good buy on Jacob Bridgman.
I'm disappointed because that is who I was planning to take with my next pick here. So that is a steal. I love Bridgman. I mean, I think he's probably my favorite play. I will say my second favorite play in the 6K range. And it's just a lot of what we saw. It's that recent form. He's playing really well right now. And this is a guy who's taken that form heading into this week. I think there's certainly some upside with what we've seen from him to get in that 6K range. I think those are the types of picks that you're going to need to hit on to make a lineup with Scotty work. But you have those options out there. So I really like that Bridgman pick myself. And now I got to pivot and pick someone else because I really was going to take him next. So for me, I will start with my number one play in the 6K range is McCarty. And, we saw McCarty miss the cut at the Phoenix Open. Probably was not the ideal course fit for Matthew McCarty at the Phoenix Open. I think this should suit him much better. At only 6.9, he's certainly affordable, and he's a guy who we're prioritizing form. His form is there. I mean, I can look past last week's, and of course, it probably wasn't the best suited for him. Before that, he gave you a top 20. He got second place the week before that. It is his first time here. We don't have much of a history for him at Pebble Beach, but I think it should suit his game at only 6,900. I think he's a better golfer than the price tag you're getting. And I don't know about you, but I'll ask you, Spence, what ownership number do you see on McCarty?
3.6%.
Love it. So at 3%, it's pretty nominal. Happy to lay the 3% and get him out there in my lineup. To pair with him, I'm going to go ahead and take Akshay. I'm going back to the well here with Akshay. He struck the heck out of the ball last week. He's a little bit inconsistent, but I think this course should suit him as long as the wind doesn't pick up and blow him off the course, which is possible because he's very skinny. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But other than that, I think he could, if he finds that ball striking that he had last week and has that rollover, I think there's plenty of upside at only 7,300 with Akshay. So Spence, I saw you gave a little bit of a laugh when I said it, so I'll get your take. Are you interested in Akshay or McCarty this week?
So I think the two best values in the $6,000 section are the two names that you just took. Before I took Sepp Straka, I was actually trying to decide if I wanted Bridgman or if I wanted McCarty, and I decided I'll just take whichever one falls back to me. And now we're in a position where both of them have been taken. So going to have to deviate from the strategy a little bit there. I think those two names in particular pair really well with Scotty Scheffler. They are top 20 players for me in my model. And my model is built in a way that's not necessarily supposed to love some of these 6K options down there. So I think they're really good plays. Batia has upside for me in my sheet. I think he's kind of one of those like prototypical no-cut tournament players that you should be looking for, where the negative trajectory comes into play with his safety. The positive upside comes into play with that upside total that I just talked about there. Third at the WM Phoenix Open. I think, Joel, you and I were maybe kind of hoping at the Farmers that's where it was going to come into play. I know we both talked about that boomer bust nature there. It didn't work, but then a week later he put it together. You're betting on upside here. And at sub 10%, that upside has the ability to pay off. He is very likely to potentially being in a winning lineup with Scotty when it's all said and done, because when he puts the potential together, he can spike at a higher rate than a lot of these guys in my sheet down in this range. The floor is going to be what you saw at the Farmers, but look, I like shooting for that upside in a no-cut tournament. I think we've all talked about it over and over again. You should be trying to find that versus any of these safe returns. And the funny thing is, I keep saying that, and I keep taking all the safe players in my model. My board's kind of come out funky with the way that it's played. I don't know if my build is necessarily exactly what we were speaking of high upside GPP plays. But I mean, that's what happens in an 80-man tournament where there's 4 teams drafting. You kind of just sometimes have to lock in a value where you see it.
There you have it. And of course, as you know already, but as a reminder, who you take and what type of tournament you're playing in matters a lot, right? Yeah. If you're playing a 50-50 tournament or a small tournament, safety is way more important, right? You want to get guys that are going to score. You don't want anyone that's going to be imploding. Whereas if you're going for a GPP, it's upside. You just want to win a tournament. You need the guys who are going to score the most points. So what tournament you're entering and then how you pick your players is very much so correlated. Todd, you got Bridgman with your last pick. Your value plays coming off the board here. You still have $8,800 to spend per pick. Where are you going with your 5th pick?
So this is kind of where I'm torn between because I've still got one guy that's decently high price that I would like to get to, but I don't believe I'm going to do so. So I think I'm going to drop down to kind of the middle of the board and go 8,000 with Daniel Berger. I'm not necessarily sure what ownership looks like on him. He's kind of been back and forth this season. T6 at Sony to open up, T16 at the Phoenix Open last week, and then a T56 in the middle at American Express, where I honestly expected him to play better than he did. But I mean, when you look at his course history here, it's amazing. He won here in 2021, and he's one of the more accurate players off the tee. And yeah, I just think Daniel Berger is a solid pick at 8,000.
Daniel Berger off the board. If you watch this show, you know me and Spencer you already know we endorse that pick. We love Daniel Berger. I'm surprised he lasted this long in the draft to get to you at 8K. I think it's a good value, plenty of upside. Spence, I probably gave the answer for you already, but I'll take it from you. Daniel Berger in your pool this week.
Yeah, it was going to be my next pick. This has really fallen apart. And I mean, honestly, a lot of it's come from the Lowry selection, the Berger selection, the Bridgman selection, McCarty. Like, I can't even drop down now in the way that I wanted to move back up. And the problem is I would love to have Cantlay in this build with the way that it's worked out. Can't have Cantlay. So I'm going to let you guys talk for a second because I really don't know where I plan to go. Like, I kind of needed Berger to make this lineup work the way that I wanted to. And I think I probably have to go rogue now. So I'll let you guys talk for a second. Give me 1 minute to try to figure out a selection here.
All right. Well, while Spencer tries to get his pick together, Todd, I think I kind of skipped you here. So I want to go back and get your take. Are you interested in Matthew McCarty or Akshay Bhatia this week?
Matthew McCarty is always a weird pick for me. I never really find myself playing him a whole lot. I did like Akshay a little bit this week. I think his ball striking is finally trending back in the right direction. I just don't know if I like his putting enough to necessarily get me there or not. The person, I don't know if it's good enough or warranted to throw out names that haven't been selected, but I feel like where Spencer is not going to probably agree with Data Golf has probably got to be with Siwoo Kim a little bit since he's still on the board.
Interesting. Well, Spence, I don't think you can afford Siwoo Kim anyway, but we'll have to get your take. Will Siwoo Kim be in your player pool?
No, like the Siwoos, this is going to be like a terrible take when it's all said and done. The Gotterups, a lot of these guys, Michael Thorbjornsen, these names that have all this current form, I think Gotterup and Thorbjornsen specifically lose a lot of that driving appeal. Siwoo has some similar answers in different ways. Like those are all the names that I'm trying to take on this week. Couldn't afford him. I don't know exactly what's the optimal route for me to take because I've kind of now positioned myself in this no man's land to where like I got Fleetwood and I'm happy with that, but this probably should have been built in a different capacity. And, we talk about this every single week, Joel. You make a pick and it's very definitive because when somebody else takes a name that you had pre-planned to be put into your build and you can even just look at that. Like you had it very difficult last week. It was kudos to you for winning the draft. And I might have been the Hideki team last week. I don't know how you beat my team. I was 6 for 6. I had the lead entering the weekend and I still didn't pull it off of your 5 of 16 because Gotterup went nuts. And, we've talked a lot about it with Scotty and Scotty's a different beast here when we have this discussion. But when Gotterup was in second place, he might've been even in third place at the time. Gotterup was the highest point getter before that tournament was even done. And then Gotterup ends up winning the tournament. And he ended up, I understand you lost by a half point in the one area. And I apologize for that. You beat me by a couple points on the flip end of it with Gotterup. So I didn't run very well against you there. And at some point you have to question what's the more important victory, beating me or getting a ticket into the big contest. Like it's probably A and B on there if you want to go down that route. But I don't know, Joel. I'm going to just make this simple because I really don't know what to do here. I'm going to take Harry Hall at 7,500. I talked about this with Sepp Straka of this putts per GIR. Another really big player for me in the putts per GIR because of the short iron play that he has and his ability to make putts. He's fourth in my model in that area. I understand that the course history does not look good. 58th in 2025 and the 34th in 2023. I'm kind of just hoping that at this stage of his career, he's a better golfer than he's ever been. We see that quite frequently with a lot of these names. You can even kind of cherry pick a Chris Gotterup discussion of it, of he had gone miscut at the WM Phoenix Open before he ends up winning the thing last week. So I talked about Henley quite a bit a year ago of him potentially being a top 5, top 10 player. That's a consensus now. And if you look at Harry Hall, I think Hall is a legitimate top 15 player in the world that doesn't oftentimes get treated like that. And you get a course here to where, he's wayward off the tee. The driving is not necessarily the strength. I think if he can just find a fairway at this course and kind of use all those other strengths to his advantage, he has the ability to spike with the putter a lot more than the rest of these names. And where I'm at here, I'm going to play a little bit of that upside with the rest of this build that I have.
Boom. All right. So who's your pick? Did you say Harry Hall. Oh, that's another guy I was on this week. I like Harry Hall. So good pick, Spence. I'm a little disappointed. Harry Hall is interesting because let me ask you before I say this. What ownership percentage did you say you saw on him?
I say 5%.
Yeah, that's what I thought it would be low. And I really like Harry Hall with a low ownership percentage this week. I think people might be a little bit turned off by his recent ball striking. But if you know Harry Hall, one, it won't be that bad again. And two, that's not where Harry Hall makes his money. So if you're relying on ball striking for Harry Hall, then that's not how you're going to win. And this isn't a course that you maybe need to rely on ball striking as much. If you can let Harry Hall do his thing, drain a bunch of putts, be great around the green, that's where you'll see a spike result at only 7,500. Harry Hall would definitely be someone that I'm interested in this week as well. Team audience, it looks like at least Michael Kim and Gotterup are locked in. Or is it Fowler? Is Andrew making a joke, or is it Fowler or Gotterup? That's a little controversy. I will let Courtney make the final pick. What do you guys think? Is it Gotterup?
That would be my guess.
I think they probably want it to be Gotterup, in fairness. But it's not a bad pick. So Michael Kim and Chris Gotterup off the board. Would love to go to you here, Spence. Are you interested? I know you kind of spoke a little bit about Gotterup before, but I'm more so intrigued to hear your take on Michael Kim this week.
I like Michael Kim this week. I faded him last week against Rico Hoey in a 72-hole matchup, and that was ridiculous of the finish there. Michael Kim goes birdie from 30 feet and 20 feet to beat Rico Hoey by 1, which was a good week for me in general. That was kind of the one that would have made it even better if that one would have come to fruition. But he grades a lot better for me in this tournament. He's inside of the top 27 from an overall rank. I see him at 6% ownership, good value across the board in every single way. I think Kim is a guy, when he kind of catches fire, he catches fire through stretches. And if he's able, I saw him tweet about this. I think it was on Monday. He was talking about that he didn't necessarily feel like he had all the pieces clicking at the same time, but he had positives, and he's very outspoken. You kind of know where his game's at based off of that. That would be the only concern, that he kind of felt like he probably played worse than the results, but he did say on the back end of that, he feels like he's close. And I see it from a data perspective that he does look like he's trending in the right direction. So in the $6,000 range, I'm going to play Michael Kim this week. I know we've talked about Bridgman and McCarty, but he's one of those additional, we'll call it 2, 3, 4 names that will be in my player pool.
I agree. He's one of the 4 guys in the 6K range that I like. So that's an interesting pick there. Team audience looks pretty strong. I like Team Audience's draft. Team Audience is the hottest team so far this season. Will Team Audience get back in the win column? Maybe. Spence is doing his best to make sure that doesn't happen, Spence. You got 8,200 left with your last pick. How you rounding out your squad?
Well, I'll kick it back over to the audience. As Rat Pack just said, it can't be Gotterup. They've gone over budget on it.
The audience tried to cheat, I see. Doesn't surprise me. The audience always pulled a fast one.
If you cheat, you can win easier.
Rat Pack, that is a good catch. We got one honest man in the audience at least. And I would say, I mean, I'll let Courtney make the final call. Well, I guess, yeah, it doesn't count. No one said Fowler. So there's still plenty of nominations out there. You still need one more, and you need to actually be able to afford your last pick as you have $8,900 to spend. Audience is taking a little bit long, so I'm going to give Courtney the freedom to just make the pick. You don't have to wait for a nomination, Courtney. If you have an $8,900 golfer, Fitz it is. Courtney taking Fitz off the board. I actually think that's a really good pick. I think we've seen with Matthew Fitzpatrick that he tends to play well in bunches. You know, he gets hot, he plays through a series. I feel like we're getting that series now where Matthew Fitzpatrick is dialed in at 8,700. I think there's plenty of upside here with that pick. So I think the audience recovered well. Spence, do you like Matthew Fitzpatrick? And then who are you taking with your last pick?
I do a little bit. The one thing I'll say about Fitzpatrick is I'm surprised that the course history has not been better. 48th last year, 58th the year before, miscut in 2023. The sixth place finish in 2022 would be the upside of that in a much weaker field. But a lot of these European golfers, I think there's something to be said about that this weekend. We might see it come into play on Sunday. We're going to see the wet conditions throughout, but there are a lot of those European names, Rose, Lowry, Fleetwood for me, that are really good, nice statistical fits. And when you add in some of the comp course outlooks, become even better. And Fitz kind of fits that mold that if this is some really wet, windy, sloppy sort of a venue and the score goes a little bit not as birdie making on it, that's kind of the Fitz venue that you expect to find success.
Oh, all right. All right, Spence, 8,200. How you rounding out your squad?
So, you know, I actually think that the pairing I have here, like if I'm going to say that Jason Day lacks upside in my model in this $8,000 section, there is a player that lacks safety in my model in this $8,000 section that might actually pair really well with Jason Day. So I'm going to take Sam Burns at $8,000. Miscut at the WM Phoenix Open will probably get a lot of people off him. I only see 7% ownership right now. A lot of the statistical metrics in my sheet like him. He's the number one expected putter on this course. He's a top 10 weighted strokes gained total performer. He's number 11 in GIR putting. He's 10th in that pitch plus GIR that I have talked about. He is 9th in weighted scoring. The real downside comes into some of these similar conditions when you look at his approach play. Even his approach play in general can sometimes struggle, but positive climber for me when you look at the extra short iron. I think there's a reason why he's found success. Of the 80 players in this tournament, he's 66th in my model from 175 to 200. He's 70th from 200 plus. He jumps inside the top 25 from 125 to 150 and 100 to 125. So I think Sam Burns is a boom or bust sort of play. I just think that the upside is certainly something that you should be considering. And for as poor as this roster construction in a lot of ways went for me, this is kind of the perfect player for me to fit into this build, to take that shot once again of no ownership, high upside, pair it nicely with some of these safer targets. And, you know, all of a sudden then if Jason Day can come, we'll call it 16th place, you get a lot more out of it as Sam Burns can work his way into the top 5 at really no ownership.
I would agree that Sam Burns at 8K is super interesting. And I also find it interesting that Sam Burns and Daniel Berger this week are the same price. I think last week they were probably, like $1,600 apart, and now they're the same price. So an interesting way to look at it, an interesting take. Todd, you got your last pick here. You can almost take anyone you want with 9,700 left in your salary cap. How are you rounding out the squad?
So I think, well, I definitely know after the show's over, I'm doing this exact lineup. But for my last pick, I'm throwing in Russell Henley because I think that makes a nice little build, kind of touching on the same strengths.
Well, we gotta stop you, Todd. Russell Henley, the audience's first pick.
Yeah. No, I was speaking hypothetically for my own personal gain after the show. As far as the pick for this goes, I'm kind of torn in the middle to upper end of the 8K range. There's two guys that I kind of like, but they both kind of fall prey to the same sort of issues. But I think I'm going to end up going with Mav McNeely at 8,800. For everything that he was before he kind of got this moniker of one of the longer guys on tour now, it seemed like Pebble Beach was a place that was just kind of made for him. In 2020 and 2021, he had really solid finishes, a top 5 and a second place solo. But since then, it's kind of not been as successful yet. It's all been top 30s and top 40s, except for a WD in 2023. But I just like the putting consistency that he's able to show on the West Coast. And I think the accuracy with the short irons and stuff is still there. And yeah, he's kind of another one that I don't necessarily know why the course history isn't as good top to bottom as I feel like it should be. But also 8,800, I sort of have an issue with that price a little bit. I feel like it's a little high. But other than that, the way kind of things have shaken out, I think he's a good pick here.
I like Matt McNeely. I am a fan. 8,800. I think the price is about right. I can understand. I maybe would have liked it in the mid 8K range, maybe a little high, but I think the price is okay for Mav and certainly has the upside. So I like how way you rounded out that squad there. For me, I got to go to another 6,900 pick, and I'm torn between 3. I'll let you guys know who it is. 2 you probably could guess. It's 2 guys that are 2 of my favorites, and that's Andrew Novak and Ryo Hitsatsune. So the third is Denny McCarthy, who I think is interesting this week. I think he's a really good course fit. I think he also has some upside in the 6K range. Between those 3, I was really torn. I'm actually surprised that I'm going to settle on not Novak, which is like, I was pretty sure I'll just take Novak, but no, I'm not going Novak. I'm going to go Ryo. I really like the way Rio's been playing. I like what we've seen from him, and I'm just riding that current form that we've seen. I mean, if he's able to strike the ball like he's been the last few weeks, and we know he can get a red hot putter and make some putts, I think he can compete this week and get you in that top 10 potentially, be at the top of the leaderboard on Sunday like he was, near the top of the leaderboard like he was the last couple of weeks. So we're seeing some of the best golf from Rio recently. I think that carries over this week at only 6,800. That's a wrap for the draft tonight. I think we have 4 solid squads. I think this should be a really interesting week to see who comes out on top. I think it's going to be a very competitive week this week. But don't forget, give us a follow, hit the like button, and let us know what team you think is going to come out on top. As we do every week, we will track it. We'll come back next week. We will crown a winner. And, of course, we'll do it all over again for next week's tournament. Courtney is a very good point. No Rory. That is a little surprising. I think there's a little bit of a question mark for everyone of kind of like, we haven't seen him in a while. What's he going to? Is he going to be rusty? Is he going to be like his old self? So I think people a little bit want to just kind of get out there and see what Rory looks like. But, of course, Rory pretty much hands down the second best golfer in the world right now. So I would agree with Courtney that I'm a little surprised on that front. Before we get you guys out of here tonight, we do have our bets of the week. And we'll start with you, Spencer. Is there one bet you love this week?
The price is probably gone on this one. I'll just mention it. I took Sepp Straka minus 120 over Keegan Bradley, if you can still find that number out there. I like that bet quite a bit. Of one that is still something that people can get access to, I'll say Justin Rose. We'll call it minus 112, I think is the best number against JJ Spawn. I am most surprised of a player that did not get picked very quickly, of Cameron Young, for 2 reasons. One, he's Data Golf's #1 player, and I feel like that's sometimes something that comes into play on this show. Name that I'm not necessarily playing myself either. I understand why Data Golf has him that way. He's very cheap compared to what you got last week. Cameron Young was bad, like really bad from a statistical perspective. He was my #1 pick in the draft. And he was a golfer that I had a lot of exposure to when it came to made cut parlays. I took him and Sam Stevens in pretty much every iteration known to man. And I was sitting there on Friday, specifically after Thursday night, and I really thought Cameron Young may not make the cut. And the data really never got better throughout the following days with it. And he was just off the entire week. And I just wonder if that's going to roll over this week. So I'm not playing him, but surprised to see that he was not drafted in this draft.
Ooh, all right. Let's go to you, Todd. What's your favorite bet of the week?
So I normally stick to more DFS stuff, but I think if I had to switch over to the betting side, I think I would probably just stick with the 10 years of data that we've already got and take Jason Day top 20. I feel like that's probably
Jason
the
Day.
safest you got.
I like it. Jason Day, top 20 endorsed. I'm going to give one here. I think he was briefly mentioned on the show. I'm surprised Siwoo Kim didn't get drafted. The way he's been playing is, he's lights out. It's the best golf we've seen from Siwoo Kim. I think it's a good course fit. The DFS ownership might get a little wild. Obviously, it's going to be hard to play him with Scotty Scheffler. But I think a nice way to play Siwoo this week is get him in the top 20 market. You can get it. It's basically a coin flip right now at top 20. I think it's pretty safe. He doesn't even need a top 10. But if you just look at the way he's been playing recently, 3rd, 2nd, 6th, 11th, 4th. He has been just lights out. But even here at this course, his last 2 times has given you 2 top 15. So I think in the top 20 market for Siwoo Kim, the way he's playing at this course where he's got a pretty good history, I think that's a nice way to go with it. That's it. That's a wrap for us tonight. Should be a fun week. Pebble Beach is just beautiful. It's a fun tournament to watch. So you get some action on the golf tournament this week. You make some money. You watch a beautiful golf course and the best golfers in the world playing it. A huge, huge thank you to Todd for coming on and drafting with us tonight. Todd is excellent. You probably already follow him, but in case you don't, make sure you give Todd a follow. Just by following Todd, you'll make some more money and making some golf bets. Todd is an ace. He is super sharp. He has some really great takes. He'll certainly help you make some wise selections. Before we get out of here, Todd, why don't you tell everyone where they can find you this week?
You can find me on Twitter. My handle is just at Todd McGill. And you can go to my website, thedailygolferblog.com. I don't necessarily write a whole lot of fantasy DFS stuff on there. I do from time to time, but most of it's more golf instruction and that kind of stuff related. But yeah, that's where you can find me.
I love it. Spence, did I forget anything tonight?
Well, very quickly, Todd, do you want to tell everybody what you do for the Rotoballer website? Talk about your weekly piece that you write.
Yeah. So I'm the head of the PGA News desk. So I just basically give out all the assignments for all the guys to write the quick little news blurbs and contribute to that myself. And then I'm also the writer for the Horse for the Course article that comes out every Monday. It's pretty much just trying to find the best course history, which is probably why I like to lean into it so much, because I'm just constantly studying it anyway. But yeah, you can find me on Mondays for sure.
Yeah, Todd does great work. I'm very proud. I say this at the end of every single show. I'm very proud of all the work that we have that goes up on the website. It is a collaborative effort from top to bottom. Todd talked about it. Our news desk team is really good. If you ever see those blurbs on any of those sites, I know like if you follow fantasy football specifically, like they have partnerships with Sleeper. I'm sure you see it in the apps there, but Rotoballer has a very big player news desk team in all these sports, and it's one of the things that keeps the lights on. So Todd's work is very, very valuable for the website, and I appreciate you coming on tonight, Todd, and just talking about some thoughts about DFS, us going through all these conversations, and I hope everybody out there had a good listen, and good luck to everybody this week.
Yeah, I had a blast. Thanks for having me on.